Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Major Applications Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Ojalobi, the Committee Chairman. A warm welcome to those who have joined us in the room tonight and a warm welcome to those who will view this now or later on YouTube. I will do the usual administration first and then I'll explain how the meeting works. So if I can do apologies for absence first, please.
We've had apologies from Councillor Melvin and Councillor Goddard, with Councillor Chamdow and Councillor Chapman substituting.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? None. Minutes of the meeting, 19th of June, was circulated. Anybody got any corrections? Are we happy? Good. That's what I need. We are taking the agenda as was published by the Head of Planning. It's all in Part 1 and therefore in public, and we will be taking them in the order that they were given. Okay. This is a meeting of the Planning Committee held in public and not a public meeting. Therefore, the rights to address this committee are as set out in the Council Constitution, as summarised in the committee papers, and as I shall summarise in a moment. As I said in my introduction, we are on the Council's YouTube feed. The feed comes this way, so all of us are currently visible. The audience is not. Anyone who comes to speak at that table in the course of the evening will find themselves as part of that recording. There is no fire drill planned for this evening, so if the fire alarm goes, we shall be leaving. The fire exit is through that door, and the normal best exit out is to go through the next set of doors in front of you. Don't turn right, through the next set of doors and down the spiral staircase, or else there is a fire exit in the corner behind me. And I please ask that all mobile phones are switched off or at least silent, particularly from my colleagues. Can I also ask, and this is a plea, I'm sure all of you are here for particular items tonight, could I ask, we have a very full agenda and another committee to follow this one, so could I ask that when you leave, you don't congregate either in the room or immediately beyond the door, because that does make it difficult for us to keep the thing moving, and we do need to do that tonight. Members have had the reports now for around about a week, and will have read them. The officers will give us a presentation on each item, which outlines the main issues for members to consider. There will also be slides which will appear on these two screens. I appreciate you limited visibility sometimes from the audience, but that is what they will get. For those items with a petition, which is the first two items, items 6 and 7. For item 6, petitioners get 5 minutes, be guided by the traffic lights, 4 green. When it goes to amber, you're in your final minute, and when you go to red, we will stop you. Members may ask you questions to clarify points, they may not, but we'll see how that goes. The applicants have a right to address us for 5 minutes. There are no ward councillors coming tonight, although in respect of item 6, I do have a letter from Councillor Prince to read, so I will read that at the end in substitution for ward councillors. The petition on the old vinyl factory is in support, so that will be a straightforward 5 minutes from the petitioners, and again there are no ward councillors. I can't see any, and no one's indicated they're coming, so the Councillor Oswald is on committee anyway, so that's fine. Quick introduction to committee and then we'll get underway. I'm going to start on my far left tonight. Councillor Duncan, Councillor Oswald, Councillor Morse coming up the table, and I'll work my way down on this side. Councillor Edwards, Councillor Chamdale, Councillor Tuckwell, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Chapman. They are your voting members of committee tonight. There are 8 of them. If they manage to get to a 4-all tie, I get a casting vote. Other than that, I don't vote. Transport matters tonight will be dealt with by Alan Tilley. Mandip Malhotra is presenting. Chris Brady is watching. I don't know that he's actually going to say anything. James Rogers, the Head of Planning Officer's advice, as usual. Luke Taylor is my clerk. Glenn Egan is our legal advisor. That's introductions done. I now will move, please, to item 6. My only commentary on this, that this was subject to a member's site visit last Friday. So members have seen this site actually on the ground. When you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Before we start, there is a fairly lengthy addendum to agenda item number 6. it appears that there were some errors in the save function, so some of the conditions weren't saved before they were printed in this report. So we have sought primarily to tidy up some of the conditions through the addendum. There is an additional head of term, and that's to ensure that we're securing a residential travel plan because the development is over 80 residential units and therefore should be providing one. That has resulted in amendments to Condition 10, Part 2D. I think those are the primary condition and heads of terms changes. The only other thing to add is that the report does make reference to this site being a brownfield site. So we want to clarify that under the MPPF definition, and there is further explanation on page 3 of your addendum, the policy officer has clarified this is not brownfield land. However, the application site is a site allocation. So if I take you through the presentation, the application site is the former Belmore allotment site. It has been to planning committee a few times before. It has had permission for residential development. It lies to the south of an area of greenbelt open space, and Merrifield House is just here, and predominantly the site is surrounded by residential properties. So as I mentioned, the greenbelt land lies to the north of the site. The application site itself, apart from having an emerging site allocation, has no other land designations. So the application site is part of our emerging site allocation, so it is designated for a residential-led development or redevelopment of this site. So the former allotments have ceased their use maybe 15 years ago. Sorry that I don't have the exact date, but prior to the original planning permissions being granted for residential development on this site. It is in a fairly sustainable location, so we have tried to map that it's approximately 700 metres, and that's a walking distance, so as the crow, rather than an as the crow flies, so you'd travel down Burns Close to get to the Uxbridge Road, where there is actually, so the purple outline here denotes that we do have a town centre along Uxbridge Road, which provides everyday requirements for residents. If we take you through to the plans, so the proposal is for 112 residential units. The scheme is 100% affordable housing. It comprises 31 bedroom units, 47 two-beds, and 33 three-bed and 2 four-bed flats. We are also providing car parking along the site, so the car parking is denoted in the slightly yellow shade. There are 5 blocks proposed, so we have block A, B, C, D, and E to the south. The layout is fairly similar to the previous approval, and I do have a slide of the previous approval later on. The plans, if we show the site in context, so we have the 5 blocks to the north, the greenbelt land to the north of the site, and the residential accommodation primarily wrapping around the bottom of the site. The application does also comprise something which is quite unique, and I think that's primarily because the site is a council-owned site, in that we are proposing to deliver one of 2 potential footbridges, which would lead the development and the wider area over to the greenbelt open space to the north. The application site itself provides child play space in this corner of the development. There is also communal amenity space within the development serving all of the residents, but the key benefit will be that this will form a public route providing access to existing and future residents to the open space. The child play area that's provided on the site is also for everyone's use. It's not just for the development. This is not a gated development. It will be a road built to adoptable standards and provide access in and out from Burns Close through to Melrose Close. So the plan packs provide ground, first, second, and floor plans. Development is predominantly 3 stories in height. There are additions of height at bookends of the development. I take you through the floor plans for the proposed development, roof plans where there are PVs that are proposed as part of the energy strategy, and here are some typical elevations of some of the properties. These are the ones that are proposed fronting onto Melrose Close. Here we have some sections through the site. So here you can see where there are elements that are 2 stories in height. There is some increase to 3 and then a 4th floor in certain parts of the site. These are the elevations, so a flat roof design with balconies to provide private amenity space for future residents. And these are predominantly the 3-story blocks. This is a section through what is the proposed footbridge across the ditch which runs along the boundary between the application site and the green belt to the north, so the public open space. These are indicative plans, and only one of the 2 bridges would be delivered as part of the proposal, but it will be subject to further work to investigate which is the better bridge location, to the east of the northern part of the site or the west. These are some typical materials for the application site. This is in the south-east corner of the application site, so these are 2 residential properties. These are the existing properties along Melrose Close, and this will form the vehicular entrance into the proposed development. So you can see the proposed development in the background on the slide at the bottom. There you go, that's a little bit clearer. So just to provide some context, we did manage to find the approved layout for the 2011 planning permission. So we had fairly similar layouts of built form. I guess the key difference is that we're now providing public open space and child play space in a more central area for the existing and future residents. And also the key change being that we will provide either here or here a footbridge over to the public open space. Sorry, and that's the proposed layout. So this is the previously approved, and this is as proposed today. Take you through some photographs. So this is the view from Balmoral Drive into the site by Burns Close. Burns Close itself, view into the distance. This is a view of the site from the east. So to provide some context, I make lots of reference to the Greenbelt land. The Greenbelt land lies on the other side of this established hedgerow. This established hedgerow would be retained as part of the development. It is not part of the application site itself, and therefore it would not be removed. This is the rear of properties in Marvel Avenue. The east of the site looking south towards Melrose Close. And I don't know if you can see it very clearly in this image, but there is some blue hoarding in this position here, and that's the location of the former building that was demolished on the site. In the car park in Melrose Close. As I've already mentioned, the application site is delivering 100% affordable housing. That would comprise 33 social rent units, 53 shared ownership, and 26 discount market sale units. Whilst the application site might not be a brownfield site in technical terms, it is a site allocation and has been a site allocation for a number of years, which affords considerable weight in allowing the principle of this residential-led development on the site. The site is bound to the north by Greenbelt land. However, a significant natural vegetation buffer exists and would not be removed. And in addition, the application or the development is set away from the boundary to prevent an impact on the openness and the setting of the Greenbelt. So that's this setback that's provided to the north of the site. As previously demonstrated, the application is in a highly sustainable location and should be supported for residential homes. There have been a number of concerns raised by local residents, and I'm sure the petitioners will reiterate them again. They are all detailed within the officer report. We have had concerns raised about slow worms at the site, and so I'll show you some photographs that I think were circulated to all members earlier in the week, along with some additional comments from objectors. So slow worms do exist in the local area, and we acknowledge that. Now, we did impose an ecology condition, which was condition 8, in order to ensure that we are suitably moving the habitat to a more suitable location, or protecting it, or protecting it. It has come to light that condition 8 was a prior to above ground works condition, so we're proposing to change that to prior to any works commencing on the site. Obviously, if you get to above groundworks level, you would have already caused problems to this ecological corridor. So I apologise for that error, but the condition is now amended so that we will deal with the ecological values on the site. Accordingly, the application is recommended for approval.
Petitioner on this one? Whoever's coming forward to speak? If you press the button on the middle of the microphone, it will light up. No, not yet. That's it. We will only start timing once you start talking.
Okay. Thank you for having us. We have a few contesters based on what you were saying today. First one about our parking and access. I've sent through pictures of parking during the daytime around the school access route of Grange Park. You can clearly see in the pictures that we've submitted, you've got an ambulance that cannot get down the road to access an emergency because the parking is so very restricted, and that's in Burns Close alone. In Melrose Close, you can see through the pictures that our refuge lorries reverse down our street because they can't get all the way round due to our parking. And there isn't sufficient parking for the residents of Melrose Close, let alone for extensive of more residents that will come. I know that you said that there'll be enough parking for all of the new residents. You're going based on 1 car per household. Most of the cars in Melrose Close are due to 3 car per households, so it doesn't combat any reference to that problem that we have. When you changed the original plans, at the end of Melrose Close there is an old garage site where garages were demolished. You're planning to build houses on that now. Originally there was no plan, that was going to be extended parking for the Melrose residents. You've now submitted plans to put extra houses along that site, which further reduces the parking and the access for Melrose residents. So you've increased the housing and decreased it for our residents. In terms of how your lorries are going to access the site to do building work, I myself have just had recent building work. We couldn't have access to any of the cement trucks or the mud removal lorries. We had to go knock on specific residents' doors to ask them to move their vehicles because they don't fit down the street, so I don't know how you're going to access into our street. Also with the parking, the planning officer that wrote the report said that there are white lines clearly marked in the street to stop people from parking on the corners around Melrose Close and bollards. One of the bollards has been knocked down for over 6 years and never been replaced. The white marks haven't been painted in any recent time, probably before I was born, and I'm 31. They're hardly visible at all, but also if our residents didn't park there, they have nowhere else to park. We recently had the parking at the end of the garages blocked off. We've had it reopened thanks to Councillor Prince, and we're under a petition to have CCTV installed because the crime rates in the area are so badly staffed by police, not to their fault. We have 1 police community officer for our ward. We have an open case, which I have the reference for XH0433018 for a burglary of car theft within our street, that our own CCTV from our houses has caught that resident having his car broken into. So we don't feel that the site is secure, and we don't feel comfortable having a higher volume of houses and flats to break into. There is no improvement on the local services and facilities. Our GPs, our dentists, our schools, I'm a school teacher myself, are overrun. There isn't the capacity within those local facilities to take the amount of people that are going to live in these dwellings. In terms of us as residents, our privacy has not been taken into account at all. You've taken more account into the boundary line for the greenfield land that no one lives on. Our fence is back directly onto 3-storey flats that people can look over into all of our gardens from rooftop gardens. So you've taken no consideration into our privacy as residents that already live there. So we would like the boundary lines at least to be taken back considerably and reduce the amount of housing there. Pollution whilst working. My next neighbour, my sister, has a son who suffers severely with breathing difficulties due to cerebral palsy, as do a number of other residents in our street. There's no consideration into the emissions that are going to come from building within this site, and nothing has been addressed to that personally. Also, we have a supporting petition that the local authority advised us to cancel for the petition for it to be turned back into allotments. We had 113 signatures of residents who are willing to pay for that allotment site and pay for it annually to keep their allotment site going. We were not informed that the allotment site would be being removed. I think it was 16 years ago that it was closed. We were not given the opportunity to continue that. The waiting list for an allotment site is huge. We would like it back.
You have just about reached time. I think you had just about finished.
Thank you.
Good. Just stay there a moment. Do members have any questions? I've got a couple of bits noted down, but apart from that, do members have any questions? No? Good. Okay, thank you very much.
Would you like me to leave any of the pictures? I did email them in to Luke. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Now hang on, there's 5 minutes, not 2. There's 5 minutes, not 2. No, 5 minutes, not 2. It should have been made clear. Yeah, good. No, there's... You get 5 minutes to speak on an item, not 10 minutes. Sorry. But that should have been made absolutely clear. Does the applicant wish to speak on this one?
Do I need to press? Yeah.
Yeah, when you're ready, we'll settle.
Sorry.
That's it? Job done.
Okay, I'm just going to say I agree with the recommendations as detailed in the officer's report, and I am happy to receive any questions that haven't already been covered.
Sorry, do members wish to ask the applicant any questions as you have an opportunity? Councillor Ross, we won't stray into debate, obviously, but questions of clarification are absolutely fine.
It's okay. Thanks very much. The petitioner's just raised a number of issues that maybe we should be concerned about. One of them is construction traffic. How do you plan to get on the site? And we've seen some photographs that were sent through to us electronically, and the whole area there is pretty crowded with parked vehicles. So I have a concern about how you're going to get construction onto the site, or construction vehicles, sorry.
Obviously, if the scheme is approved, then the consideration of how we'll get construction traffic onto the site is a matter that's going to need a lot of consideration and a lot of engagement with contractors. So we've got a number of ideas about how we can do that, but it's not something that we would include the proposal within a planning application, other than, I guess, something that could be dealt with by condition in terms of a management plan for construction traffic.
There is one in the addendum. There may not have been one in the report. There's one in the addendum.
Thank you.
Councillor Morse?
In your application statement, you said that these junctions can handle this traffic. Can you tell us how you modelled it, and has this model been available to council officers to examine your model?
Okay, the vehicular movement, both existing and proposed, have been modelled by transport consultants who've prepared transport statements, and that modelling has been submitted to the council as part of the application. It's been reviewed by the council's highways engineer. There have been queries back and forward about the detail of the modelling that's taken place, which have been answered, and the current position is that the council's engineer is satisfied that the modelling has been carried out correctly and that proposals are appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay. I see no more questions, so thank you very much. Could you just turn the microphone off for me? Thank you very much. Okay, I will now read Councillor Prince's statements for completeness, and then we move forward. Dear Planning Committee, I write in opposition to this planning application. I believe that adequate consideration has not been made and that the development will negatively impact upon the residents of Burns Close and Melrose Close, as well as any other roads. The access points to this development have been identified as Melrose Close and Burns Close, which are already difficult roads to navigate without the presence of additional 112 residential units. The application refers to 127 parking spaces. I think it's actually 112, but to be accompanied with the development, yet many of these dwellings will have multiple bedrooms. Safe to assume we're looking at closest to 2 cars per dwelling. There's not ample parking support for development, and it will cause overspill parking to Melrose Close and Burns Close. Melrose Close and Burns Close are already heavily congested. In the supporting documents, these roads are referred to as lightly trafficked with ample parking bays. Anyone who has stepped foot in Melrose Close will know that cars are parked all over the place, and it's often impossible to navigate through the roads safely. I have dealt with cases where the Hillingdon school transport buses that are supposed to provide door-to-door service have refused to go down the road in case they hit other cars because there's no space to turn a vehicle around. It's undeniable that cars from this new development will end up being parked in Melrose Close and Burns Close, causing severe problems for existing residents. We know some residents will use services such as home delivery for food shopping, requiring large lorries to make deliveries. Melrose Close is not fit for this, resulting in nuisance and complaints. The development will also mean that a further 200 or so cars will use the roads that are already tight and not designed for the many vehicles to use it. There's simply not enough room on the roads for more than one car to navigate it at a time. I believe the committee have already been provided with evidence of an ambulance not being able to navigate the narrow and congested roads. This is not just a matter of inconvenience. An emergency services struggling to navigate these roads proves they're not fit to be an access point for this development. I trust the planning committee will tell the developer to rethink the access routes because the proposals are not enough and will not work. And I've given that to my clerk to go in the record. Okay. Does the head of planning want to start us off, and then I'll open this one up?
Just on some of the highway issues. So the construction management condition, it's referenced in the addendum. If members want to see the full version of it, I'll reference the page that it's on because it's in another report, but it's on page 65. And one of the things that it covers is the hours during which construction will occur, and we also look at the when construction vehicles come to and from the site, including how they're managed during peak hours. The peak traffic hours in Burns Close are clearly when school drop-off and collection is occurring, so the logical outcome would be that we'd be ensuring through the construction management plan condition that the construction vehicles are going to and from the construction site so they don't conflict with school drop-off and collection, because that is clearly the peak traffic impacts times. I think I'll just leave it at that point.
Who wants to start me off? Somebody? Councillor Oswald, go on. You might as well.
Thank you, Chairman. I might as well. Yeah, I think we're partly stymied on this. I'm really sad that we've lost allotments. I was under the understanding that there was a waiting list for allotments, but this is obviously surplus to requirements because that's what it says in the report. As far as the developments are concerned, I'm quite pleased to see that there's 33 three-bedroom properties and 2 4-bedrooms. Now that's a step up in my estimation from some of the stuff that we've been getting that's been coming in front of us. So that's okay. The petitioner mentioned about the refuse vehicle having to reverse onto Burns Close, I think it was, or Melrose, but that happens anyway across the borough. There are a lot of roads where refuse vehicles reverse down to pick up whatever they've got to pick up. So that's nothing new. I appreciate the concern, but that's nothing new. So I don't think that's a reason that we could use to refuse this. Previous application was for approval, Chairman. So I think it would be difficult for us, even with listening to the petitioner, for us to refuse this. I don't really think we've got strong enough grounds. I'll leave it there for now, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Morse.
As this road going to be adopted, because going back to the ambulance issue, I've had issues where if it's not an adopted road, we cannot put down restrictions on the corners because I ran into this problem in another. So I would like to know if this actually road is going to be adopted.
It's been amended in the addendum to say adoptable standards, I think. page 1. So that is,
It needs to be adopted.
yep, because it is an access route in and out. So yes, that makes sense.
I've had problems with that.
Yeah, I'm sure we all have. Any others, Councillor Edwards?
I have a few issues. I would just like to explore the petitioner's comments about the impact on privacy with regards to the overlooking on the rear gardens. The plan that is in our plan pack is not sufficiently clear for me to be able to read on the second floor plan of Block E, which is the one I believe that backs onto these properties, whether these are open terraces that would allow access, public access and potential overlooking. Can officers please clarify that for me?
So the plan on screen at the moment, elevation number 4. Elevation number 4 at the very bottom shows the rear of Block E as it faces onto the properties which are on Melrose Close. So do you want me to point out that relationship on the plans? Yep. So on the plans, so it's this relationship here, and so this elevation that I will be showing you. Now, let me go back to it. So it's the bottom elevation here. Now what you'll see from the plans is that, oh, sorry, I point it out here, this section and this section are set closer to the properties, and this area is recessed in, and that's because the block has been built in almost a U shape. The separation distances are in the region of 26 metres, which is in compliance with our standards for separation distances for overlooking between habitable properties. So just to clarify, separation distance from the closest balcony, which will be approximately here, to the closest property, which will be approximately here, is in excess.
May I pursue that a little bit further?
Of course.
If we could go back to the elevations. Yes. It appears the left-hand side that's a roof terrace. Is that, or is that not? It's got appears to have railings.
There is one here.
Is that open to residents to access?
I suppose I could probably clear this up. That part of the elevation actually looks at a blank flank wall, and you wouldn't be able to see into the nearest neighbouring garden because of the orientation of where that building sat.
So if I show you the floor plan, so the terrace has been set in significantly, as we always like to do, to avoid people throwing things off the sides. So the line of visibility is restricted insofar as you can't get to the edge of the property, edge of the parapet line, in order to overlook those gardens.
The head of planning would like to assist.
I think I can help. There is something that needs to be done. We need the balcony screen there, so that when the person's here, they don't look that way, because these ones are over 30 metres away, they're too far. This one is clearly closer, so I think it would help the residents if the screen here, so that large balcony there, you only get the view that way. The other point that hasn't been raised so far, just to help members, these are big 3-bed flats, so you don't get the diagonal problems that have come up elsewhere, which is actually a good point of this scheme, because we've had issues with those pinch points.
If you may allow me, Chairman, I'm sorry, as we're getting up. The concern is that as a rather large open terrace. Potentially, I don't know about this one, whether that is open as well.
No.
I don't think it is. I would imagine that is. But it's the relationship of that to the rear gardens here.
So that
and what is the distance between that?
That terrace looks at a blank wall elevation.
Apologies, let me get you to the plan. So that relationship is, Christian,
It looks there.
The relationship is here.
That's the open terrace.
To these gardens? To this?
Yeah, which is in excess.
Or is this property, or what is this area?
They're flatted development.
This is a flatted development here.
Fine. I was under the impression that was white garden space.
No.
Fantastic.
Okay. Right,
Thank you.
good.
Resolved.
balcony I referred to is the one closest to the petitioner's house, just to, if my houses are correct.
Okay.
Which always helps.
Thank you. My second issue relates to the amenity space, and I recognise that it's adjacent to the public open space and therefore isn't a refusal reason on itself. What concerns me is the children's play area. The report talks about this being in an area of deficit, and so we recognise there is a shortage of children's play area. We're now proposing to put in a children's play area which is not adequate enough for the estate, and at the same time allow that to service the whole community. That's also within the report. I don't believe that is adequate, and I just believe that will add to the deficit of children's play in that area, and therefore we should be looking to do something to support children's play for this wider community.
I could make a suggestion, but it won't go down well, which would be you start knocking parking spaces out, because that's the bit that surrounds that play area.
Is there an off-site contribution that could be made to develop play area within the open space, for example?
That's Greenbelt, isn't it?
But can I just touch on the fact that not very many developments would offer the footbridge connection over into the public open space, which is not just for the residents of this development, it's for everyone in this area. So you will have access that doesn't exist at the moment unless you're willing to jump over this running ditch to get straight onto the public open space to the north.
Yes, I appreciate that with regards to the general public open space. It's not the issue. The issue for me is children's play, and the report says that this is an area of deficit. And actually, the estate is 20% in deficit according to our design guidance and the London plan. So we're adding further to the deficit, and I don't believe that is an appropriate way forward when there is open space that we might be able to develop or use in a way that does provide children's space off-site.
Can I help? Yes, please, James.
There are lots of little bits of the estate where there's street trees or which are always good to have lots of street trees dotted around. But if members wanted to remove the spaces, those 4 spaces here, which are some distance from any flats, I think we could find places to relocate them, but you'd lose a couple of new street trees, but because this in terms of schemes we deal with these days isn't actually a high density development, that there would be ways to reaccommodate those 4 spaces elsewhere in the development if you were happy to delegate. I think if members went beyond those 4 spaces, you might be something that's beyond, could cause me problems, but if it was those 4, you'll gain at least 60 square metres, because that's the equivalent of 4 parking spaces.
Will these 4 parking spaces be children's play areas?
Well, we can...
Because the report quite clearly says...
Well, they're the 4 that are on the bottom of where the children's play area is to be. So if members are so minded, we can ask for... we can give James delegated authority to get the plans amended to increase that play area and relocate the parking spaces.
I'm happy that we move as close as we can to provide what we believe to be the optimum for children's play in an area recognised as in deficit now.
Okay, let me develop that one out before I lose it, because otherwise I know what will happen in a minute. We'll forget it. Would members be content with that approach? No, I'm getting nods in the reverse direction. Councillor Higgins.
Sorry to come in here. I mean, it's an area of poor air quality, and the thing about trees is they help. I know they thing. So for me to lose trees is just really sort of giving with one and taking with the other and causing more of a problem. So I would, unless there's some sort of shrubbery that could be replaced, that sort of, I just don't. I mean, we've just heard from the petitioner about the shortage of parking as well. So those park spaces, if we lose one of them, will then divert onto their street. So it's sort of you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I don't really actually see but I'd rather have more trees and helping the environment than doing the thing. So can I?
area, or you agree with Councillor Higgins, you'd rather keep the trees? Because the reality is you'll lose some trees in the process, I think, because that's what will happen. They'll tighten up the car parking, so you'll lose the trees. I'm not putting words into anyone's mouth, but I think it's fairly obvious, but look at the plans.
Well, someone needs to move something, Chairman, otherwise we're just going to be sitting here.
Well, no, I'm asking for a consensus. At the moment, I've got 1-1. Everybody else is sitting on the fence. So, go on, Councillor Duncan. Are you trees or a bigger children's play area?
I'm trees. I do sympathise, and I can see where Councillor Edwards is coming, and normally I would support that view completely. But I think the fact that there's a deficit in the area, at least there is now something that can be used by everyone, plus the access now, easy access without having to try and scramble through a ditch, is immediately going to give people, everybody, you know, children as well as families who want to go over there and picnic or something on nice days, access, usable access to the open space, and that's a big plus.
Okay, right. Councillor Oswald, which way are you?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I'm trees as well.
Right.
What losing car parking spaces? We've already seen the photographs that were sent to us electronically. So,
I'm not expressing a view. I'm just trying to get a consensus to take us forward.
Yeah,
you have.
I would certainly agree with the concept. If we take away the car parking, we're actually going to create a bigger problem, because we're actually going to...
So, unless someone's going to come in on the side of parking, a bigger children's play space, I think that one has fallen.
I've not argued or even suggested that should be the way forward. My suggestion is we should be looking for off-site contribution to develop this to serve the wider community. And we require that of other developments when there's a shortfall. One wonders why we're not requiring it in this circumstance.
I think the point Amanda was basically saying is the money that might have been used for that is paying for the footbridges, which is then giving access to the open space. What I was going to mention at some point, probably would be better if the bridge details are in the section 106 rather than in planning conditions. I'll mention that now before anybody gets near a vote, that I would be recommending you add a header term to the 106 to deal with the bridge details.
I thank you. I'm grateful. I will carry on just pressing on behalf of the residents as best I can. The access to the wider green space is necessary to meet the general deficit of open, general shared amenity space. So we actually have two deficits on this estate. There is the shared amenity space and there is the children's play area. Now, the opening of the bridge does increase the access to amenity space, and it would be ridiculous to even consider refusing this application on that basis. The children's play area, though, is something I do think we should press for an improvement in this area. I've said no more. I can't say any more than that. I don't think it's enough to pull down this development, because I believe it is delivers some very significant benefits in terms of affordable housing. But I do think that we can squeeze more.
You've taken that one about as far as you can, Councillor, because it's not getting any traction at the minute. So can I just move on? People got any other issues they want to go up on the site? Councillor Higgins, please.
Yeah, it's maybe something small, but can the officers put it to the picture where they have this sort of frame of a gate of entrance into the site?
The bottom end of the
that
site.
One, yeah. How high is that? And can vehicles, delivery vehicles, movement vehicles and other vehicles get underneath that? I can't find... Easy height. It seems a bit pointless though, doesn't it? It really just seems
architectural statement. It's going to be a matter of whether you like it or not, I suspect.
That it's a gated estate. That's really good commercial.
No, we don't. It's not a gated estate.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go.
It is absolutely not. This is public access all the way through. In other words, as part of the adopted street, not hidden off. And two of the benefits out of this are the access to play area for everybody else and access to the green space for everybody else. So we don't want it gated off. It's a design feature. Anybody got anything else, Councillor? On another subject?
Oh, completely. These are minor tidying issues. One relates to the comments on page 32, where the officer says recommendation, pre-commencement condition about topsoil strict stored and maintained.
I think that is covered within the contaminated land condition. I did find it a moment ago.
Fantastic, I hadn't. And the second one was the maintenance of the landscaping condition. Ordinarily, for example, on page 215, we have another paragraph that specifies that. It seems to be not present in this one.
Yes, you're right. Needs to be added, thank you. Any others? Anybody got anything else on this one? No? Okay, so we're going to move me forward then. Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I'll move the recommendation with those changes.
Thank you very much, and all the changes in the addendum which are significant.
And notwithstanding my pressing earlier, I'm pleased to second this one for the affordable housing.
All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's unanimously approved, I think, from my side view. Okay, I'm now going to move to the old vinyl factory, Blythe Road, Hayes, item 7, page 59. Now, this is a site we're all very familiar with, but this is a change on this scheme. So,
we are going to do a slight change to normal convention insofar as I'm going to present this one, which doesn't normally happen, but I've been so involved with the vinyl factory the last 10 years, Mandip and I decided it might actually be more appropriate for me to present it. So item 7 on the agenda is for the change of use of the existing locally listed powerhouse building to office use, including the installation of 2 mezzanine floors. It also proposes the construction of a 2-storey extension to the north of the powerhouse to create additional office space plus a cafe. The application includes detailed public realm and landscaping works for a vinyl square and the permanent siting of the Nipper the dog sculpture. You will see Nipper in the slides, plus additional soft landscaping works to the south of Blythe Road. What I'd stress at this point is I'm going to show in a minute when I go through the slides bits of red line that include landscaping of the wider master plan of the site that's been revisited. And what's happened in that revisiting is they've been greened, in effect, because the original, if you go back to the original outline, it was before we kind of, as a council, focused as much as we do now on air quality and certain environmental things. So effectively, they've become greener, more sustainable, there's trees added, and therefore they help mitigate air quality impacts. So going through the slides, so the thin rectangle, I've forgotten which one's the pointer, but there we are. That's the powerhouse. That's locally listed. Opposite is Enterprise House, which is Grade 2 listed, and it's all part of the wider former EMI conservation area. There is a lot of slides, so I will skip through some of them. But what this slide shows is this is our application site, the powerhouse, but you've got areas of space that have been revisited. So this is one of the kind of communal amenity areas, and it's a sort of public square. So this is where Nipper the dog will be relocated to. So this has always been an area where people will mingle. This was more what I'd call public realm. It wasn't really anything that we were counting as sort of amenity space for the flats, but it was part of the sort of public realm area, and part of the proposals does involve building on parts of this, and I'll explain why that's acceptable in the presentation. But these other land parcels, essentially what's happened is that they're being greened, is the biggest sort of change to them. So as I say, there is a lot of plans, so I'm going to focus on the relevant ones. So this is the powerhouse. So the existing building already has additions to it. What you will see in later slides is historically it's had all manner of additions both to the front and the rear of it, which is relevant in terms of the heritage issues. So the proposals, appreciate this is a bit small, there's bigger plans, to change the use of the powerhouse, which was going to be a music venue. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any commercial interest in that. So what's happening is the highly successful CRL is relocating and will have much larger floor space. I'll comment later on why the CRL is so important, and I'm pretty confident the applicant will as well. So this is a larger floor plan. So it basically shows that there's going to be 2 floors of CRL in the powerhouse, and then a new separate building that's linked between the two, and there's a gap which effectively without getting too technical, there's been daylight and sunlight assessments that mean enough light filters into the powerhouse. So I'll go back. There is a lot of slides, I'm afraid, so I'll try not to talk about every one of them. So you've got the powerhouse building, and in front of it is a sort of what architects would call a lightweight structure, in that it's got quite a bit of glass, there's timber, and its scale, massing and form is designed to not overwhelm or compete with the powerhouse, which has its own distinctive architecture, which would be difficult to replicate. Hence, the approach is to not attempting to replicate the powerhouse on a smaller scale. There are some colour visuals, so I think if I spend too long on these, knowing there is a lot of slides. The scheme does include some Santander bikes, so members will probably be familiar with these now, as they're appearing on a number of sites in the borough, but they're definitely seen as a plus, and there's reference to them in the addendum where we're just tidying up the heads of terms. This is the landscaping of the main square. The yellow bit is relocated nipper. The point to bear in mind is members have seen these plans of the Winer factory a lot of times before. There is more trees and greenery on this now, but I won't go into the and we have further plans of more greenery. Okay, this is a sort of useful artist's impression of the extension and the existing powerhouse building. I think this is effectively saying that there's a lot of money being invested in putting the CRL. Further artist's impression. This is a sort of obviously a very old aerial, but what it shows is there used to be a lot of buildings on the EMI site, so the concept of different buildings around the powerhouse is nothing new. This one's particularly interesting because that's the powerhouse, and you can see the whole site was enclosed with a wall, a lodge, a sort of water tower. There's all manner of photos of different structures over time. So this is all relevant because obviously heritage is an important material planning consideration. This artist's impression shows that it's a quite sort of interesting building proposed, but in terms of this elevation, you can see the scale of it. It's not trying to compete with the powerhouse, which would clearly be the dominant building, and that's the way we'd want it to be. This is a slightly industrial artist's impression. So I wanted to stop on this one because this is the sort of relook main square with nipper in, and I think what it really emphasises is it's greener, more sustainable, and we think that's the right approach. That it's a good thing to change the space, and that would be secured through this planning permission. This is the site. One other point to mention is that in terms of the preservation of the locally listed building, we'd want it brought back into use. This proposal does bring it back into use. It is a slight negative to the scheme that you're losing this area of open space, but there are other material considerations in favour of the scheme, and we feel they kind of outweigh I'll leave you with a CGI. The scheme has been submitted with the intention of providing a new purpose-built facility for the Central Research Laboratory, which has outgrown its current facilities. The Council has publicly supported the development of the CRL from its outset, recognising the potential the initiative has for creating and developing new technology and turning local creativity into commercial viable prospects. So the CRL is what's described as an employment generator, so effectively it helps provide the facilities for sort of start-up businesses And what makes it different from a traditional employment site is you have a multiply effect where the concept is those businesses then go out and multiply in effect. So therefore the job creation benefits of this proposal are considered to be much greater than a more conventional use, employment use. And the CRL is also considered to have an appropriate sort of linkage back to the historical use of the site for innovation by EMI, because that EMI was one of their big features was the many inventions that came from the site. And this all is part of the consideration of the loss of the urban realm, but the benefits of the wider proposals being put forward through this application. So, I mean, those benefits, just to quickly run through them, are wider landscaping improvements, including the vinyl square, additional landscaping in bits of the Blythe Road and the entrance to the Vinear store, opportunity to secure the future of the CRL within the Borough and Hayes with much larger floor space. There's a head of term that relates to affordable workspace, which is not something we've done before, but it is a benefit. Santander bike stands and refurbishment intention of the locally listed building. So taking those all into account, we're recommending approval. In terms of the addendum, the report had some slightly negative comments from the Council's Sustainability Officer. You've got completely revised comments from the Sustainability Officer. They're quite long, but basically the officer's now supporting the scheme. So I won't go through the finer details, but if members will have noted what read like an objection in the original report. The application is recommended approval subject to the Section 106 agreement, and the other bits in the addendum are just sort of minor tidying up. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Whoever's speaking on this one, there's a petition, so thank you very much. Press the button when you're ready.
Good evening. My name is Paul Rostas, and I run the Central Research Laboratory, or the CRL as it's known, at the old vinyl factory. The CRL, famous under EMI ownership for inventing airborne radar and the CAT scanner, was resurrected in 2015 to attract young, inventive, job-creating entrepreneurs back to Hayes and to act as a catalyst for other companies to relocate here. And we're very proud to say it has really worked. The CRL is currently home to over 80 members, has supported well over 100 businesses, and created well over 60 full-time jobs, as well as inspiring confidence in hardware entrepreneurs to go on and build successful businesses. We believe it was also part of the reason for larger companies such as Sonos and GoDaddy to relocate to the old vinyl factory. The CRL already collaborates with the Global Music Academy and hopes to build on this further with other local schools and colleges to support and inspire future generations. Additionally, it has helped retain Brunel University graduates in the area and has drawn locals and people from much further afield to join its programs. Many have won awards, including a really great and tangible example recently. A young lady called Lauren Bell joined the CRL Accelerator program last year as a talented, but dare I say it, commercially naive 25-year-old product design graduate from Brunel. She had a hardware-based idea to ease eczema sufferers' itching pain. The CRL supported her intensively for 6 months to develop her new product and business plan. As a result, she has just won the Mayor of London's Entrepreneur of the Year award and is currently entertaining a significant investment by an investor from the Dragon's Den. But, and there is a but unfortunately, the CRL itself is stuck. The current building limits its potential to attract more start-up and scale-up businesses in other sectors, and even more critically, the limited size and design of the current space means that the CRL itself cannot survive financially as a business. By moving to the prominently positioned powerhouse, the CRL can treble the number of SMEs it can house, which is circa 300, and support and expand its focus to other sectors, including transportation, leveraging off Hayes' proximity to Heathrow. By having its own bespoke designed headquarters, it will create highly attractive, efficient, prototyping labs and productive workspace for SMEs to continue to grow whilst enabling the CRL itself to be economically viable and sustainable. We are excited to see the CRL grow as a local company, to continue to help restore confidence in Hayes, and we have ensured that the proposal also include affordable workspace to further benefit local businesses. As the CRL's members grow, we believe two things will happen. One, they will want to take on more grow-on space in the surrounding area, therefore creating more jobs and economic activity. And two, this in turn will encourage more large companies to relocate to Hayes, multiplying, as somebody mentioned earlier, the CRL effect and benefit. In addition, the Powerhouse consent will allow the delivery of Vinyl Square, the biggest area of public realm on the old vinyl factory site, the securing of a Santander bike station at the Powerhouse, and as we all seem to be very keen on, providing a new permanent home for Nipper the dog. Lastly, we are thrilled to have the support for this application of so many local residents and stakeholders. Thank you all for your time, and I hope you will support bringing back the iconic but currently derelict Powerhouse back to life for this exciting project. I would welcome any questions that you may have, and would also mention that the design team and the developer, you and I, are also here if you have any questions for them. Thank you again.
We'll stick questions to you, because otherwise it could go on a while. Anybody got any questions? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, just to clarify, you mentioned trebling the number of SMEs you deal with, or potentially trebling, and you mentioned the number of 300. Does that mean going from 100 to 300, or does it mean going from 300 to 900?
So no. So in our current space, in the shipping building, we have a maximum capacity of 100 desks. Yeah. In the new building, the Powerhouse and the extension, we'll have the ability to house at least 300 desks. Yeah, so trebles, absolutely.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you for your presentation and speaking so positively on the Central Research Laboratory, which is echoed through the report from others and from within the council itself. I believe I heard you say that providing affordable workspace was a key part of it.
Yep.
What happens after the 3-year period that the offer is presently being made about reduced rates? Does this mean the CRL doesn't become operative then?
No. So, as part of the proposition, we have offered to discount a certain proportion of the space for the 3.5 years to make that more affordable for, one presumes, local residents, but frankly, it can be for anybody. As a business, we want to encourage SMEs. So, if we identify good opportunities, we always want them to come into the space, and we take a commercial decision. But at the end of the day, the cost of operating the CRL, and it's a very service-intensive operation in terms of looking after members, giving them all of this support, we need a certain size to be able to do that. And, of course, we need to be able to charge for people to come into the space. Therefore, they rent those desks. So we have to be able to charge commercially attractive rates. If we made it too expensive, people wouldn't come. But we equally need to make it, we need to be able to generate enough revenue from it to cover our costs and hopefully make a small profit as well.
Councillor Moore?
I will. The idea of this originally was to attract people from Brunel to keep them in the local area, to a talent pool. How is this working? I mean, can you give us some idea how it's working at present?
So if you take, we call them cohorts, so a bit like university years. So the current cohort just started, and I think within that group, in fact, we actually have a local Hayes resident, literally from the high street, who has joined the Accelerate programme, developing a pet care product, mental health product for dogs. But in the last cohort, the graduates, the companies that graduated from the last programme, 50% of them were from Brunel. Yeah. So, dare I say, I think it's working in terms of retaining talent from Brunel, absolutely, and supporting them.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was very informative. Could you just turn the microphone off before we go, because I think that has helped members. Do members have any questions on this one, or are we happy to go forward? Councillor Higgins, is it a question, or are you? Oh, that's just one. Yeah, it's all right. No, Councillor Higgins, I'll come down the left side. Yeah, it's all right. I just did wonder whether there was any. But
sorry, I just have some issues about this artistic impression. Can we go to the first picture of the artistic impression? I was a bit. First of all, I thought it was it? There you go. There, that one. So the tree. That's a different. Is that still the same tree, but that's not inside, is it? So it's outside. Okay. No, and before that, it was like you just had fencing up. That one. So that is another. Is it the same design but a different design, or what is it? Yeah, I know. It's just. Is it the same? It's the same. Is it the same?
Trunks outside though, mate.
Yeah. No idea.
Yeah. So the
James?
trees outside the building, if that...
Yeah, but I'm trying to say, to understand, is that the finished photo you showed us in artist impression is a solid building, so that looks a bit more openy rather than a... Because I thought they were being clever and having sort of like an indoor garden, but maybe I'm,
Maybe you're overly optimistic.
Maybe I mean, you need to stimulate people, and
maybe you were just being overly optimistic.
Okay, that's all I really.
Okay, I'll go all the way down. I saw all three hands, so I'll start with Councillor Morse, then I go down the table, and then I won't miss anyone.
It says that one of the air quality conditions is purchase and drive to work zero emission vehicles. Are we proposing this for the perpetuity of the site this goes on? How does this actually work? Because it seems to be a bit of a new innovation.
I would agree.
I like the idea, but I'd just like to get
You'd like to
my
understand
way.
it, yeah, no. You wouldn't be the only one.
We may be referring to one of the changes in the addendum if it's condition 8.
Some of these have had to be...
Page 87.
Can you have a look at the addendum as well? Because I think the addendum may have adjusted some of these. Some of these were in various reports weren't quite as workable as they might have been.
That's correct. Condition 8 has been amended by the addendum, so we're looking at page 4 to make it, as Councillor Lavery said, more workable and realistic.
Yeah, so I think that bit's come out. I think is the short bit.
I was hopeful.
Yeah, well, it was the practicalities of how would it actually work, which is where you were going anyway. I think with that question, Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I'm going to move the officer's recommendation.
Right, good. Did Councillor Duncan have a query, or you going to second?
Yes, I did.
Oh, query. Go on.
I like the idea of it being separate, so it still maintains the integrity of the powerhouse building, and I very much like the glass openness so that you can then see through, and I wondered if it was considered making it much more of a glass structure on the upper levels, because it looks a bit, I don't want to offend anybody, but it does look a bit like I think I might do, a bit like an abandoned hoarding.
No, there was...
And wood tends to weather in all kinds of different ways, as we know. Sometimes it can be very pleasant, and it's nice to use a natural material. But I do think if we'd had a kind of glass structure, then you could see through. It would maintain the integrity of the powerhouse building, visually much more. But you're going to tell me good reasons why that wasn't considered.
No, so the artist's impressions were part of the original submission. During determination, there was some glazing added in the roof of the new building to allow slightly more light to filter through. So you don't get those in the artist's impression. I'm trying to find a plan that shows what happened. I might have difficulty finding it, but there was a bit more. So you had the ground floor is obviously lots of glazing. The first floor isn't, so there's some privacy to those on the first floor. And I'm trying to find some kind of... But there was some glazing added in the roof that was... The overall design was such that light would filter through and actually ultimately end up in that space between. But I can't find a plan that actually illustrates that.
So have we done as much as we can do?
So we actually had... There was a meeting where can you add more glazing to allow more light to filter through was actually discussed, and it was some tweaks were done that were after those artist impressions.
But it is a blank wall on the first floor. That's
Yeah.
the point I'm making. It doesn't seem to be broken up at all, does it?
It
isn't, in fact. And in fact, you saying that it's going to be top lit. I can understand that's going to get light into those areas, and I can understand that there would be a need for some privacy, but surely we could have some openings there. I mean, it doesn't really fit in with the rest of the buildings on that site and what we're trying to do.
I think what you get by having glazing on the entire ground floor, you'll get that sort of transparency and light going through. So you do kind of have to compensate a bit. Hence the architectural approach. I don't think the simplicity of the building would be lost if you started trying to puncture it with windows and.
Well, I'm not talking about simplicity necessarily. I'm talking about the design. I mean, it can still, that wouldn't compromise simplicity. I'm not, there are all kinds of design solutions, aren't there, that we see in all kinds of modern buildings now. But I can see the top lighting on that, and it shows it. Yeah.
So this may help a bit. So there is some glazing in the roof, and you'll see there's a gap here. Where so the sort of light,
but it is a blank wall. It shuts out.
Okay, can I just take Councillor Higgins for a second?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm quite lucky. I work on lovely new buildings that have old and new, and glass is the thing. That's what I was driving off in the beginning. That I thought it was like a large greenhouse, which I think would work really well. I think you have a very tall building next to it. So saying that light's going to come in under a building, or grade 2 listed building, which is twice the height of it, is not true. What we need to do, you can have glass, you can have it smoked, you can have it tinted, you can have it lots of things to have privacy, but at least it still gives that feeling of modern and new. And what they're trying to say is they're trying to use the old space in a new way to make new design, and that to me means that building should be more modern and more of a glass structure. So that's my feeling on it. So I hope I have conveyed what you said.
Problem is we have what we have. If I may be so bold.
That was very much the point I was going to make, was we have to consider the plans on its merits.
And are we going to refuse this plan on the basis of that first floor? And I'm not sure we are.
I wasn't proposing that we be getting to the point of refusing it. No, but I was just interested to try and understand if there was a reason, use or some design reason that we were presented with such a blank facade at first floor, when the whole concept of having this addition was to have something that we could see through to the powerhouse building, instead of all these old walls and brick buildings that had previously obscured part of it. We were now opening it up, but no, we weren't, not here. And I was just interested to try and understand that. That's all.
Well, I think we've got about as far as we're going to get, and the thing is what is before us. Councillor Higgins.
Can't we use this under delegated powers of the head of planning to come with something? We're not saying this. The principle of the building is fine, and it's just the materials. What we're saying here is the materials. We're not asking to refuse it. We wouldn't dream of that. It's a fantastic thing. It's brilliant. But what I'm trying to say is that I don't agree with the materials of this.
I think we may be missing that. Effectively, we've got a building that half of its facade is glass, which is much more than a normal building would have. So we've gone beyond the normal level in terms of amount of glazing, and I think that may be...
We're 50% there, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, the head of planning is not supporting that suggestion, so I'm going to take this one as it's presented, because I think that's all I can do at this point. Councillor Edwards, could I second? Thank you. Could all those in favour please clearly show me? Thank you. That one's approved. Right. Let us now move to the third item on our agenda, Stamford House, 9 Nestles Avenue, Hayes. Mandate, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I mention that committee item number 8 on tonight's agenda is Stamford House. So this is the second planning application that we have for the site. I think last month we brought an urgent item to planning committee, which was reasons for refusals for an appeal against non-determination. I will go through these plans, but they are almost identical to the previous scheme you saw last month. The key difference is that the scheme that you resolved to recommend for refusal last month had 4 car parking spaces on site. This application differs in that it proposes stacker parking. So there is car parking provided at ground floor level in stackers to a ratio of 0.6. However, the built form is the same as the previous scheme, so it rises, it starts off on Nestles Avenue as being a fairly low-level building with residential accommodation on the ground floor frontage. The scheme is the same insofar as it provides its access to the residential cores from what is effectively an undercroft walkway. So there is actually built form up to the boundary above a double-storey height undercroft. One of the concerns is that provides a relatively unsafe access route, an undesirable access route for all of the residents of this 80-odd unit scheme. This application also has no employment uses. So the previous scheme had some ground level employment. This one, however, doesn't. The application is still a site allocation, so the Nestles factory that we've approved and the Clue scheme that we've approved on Nestles Avenue are both part of emerging site allocation SA5. This is coming forward as one very small portion of that land allocation. So if, as an example, the whole of this stretch is the site allocation, Site B has been given its own sort of specific references to try and come forward comprehensively. Part of the concern with this site is also that it potentially blights the future development of the sites around it by virtue of its almost entire full site coverage. It is recommended for refusal. There is a slight amendment via the addendum to refusal reason number 8, and that's that the refusal reason relates to the layout, vehicle access and servicing delivering having a negative highways impact. Refuse collection is also a concern, primarily because refuse needs to be dragged all the way down that eastern double-storey access route in order to get collected from Nestles Avenue. The recommendation is for refusal.
Can I just clarify one point for members? Am I right in believing that the parking on this is triple stackers? Okay.
That is correct.
Yeah, so we have triple stackers. Right, Councillor Morse.
From our side's point of view, this is a very comprehensive report, and we're moving officer's recommendation immediately.
You might fairly quickly. Councillor Edwards, will you?
I have absolutely no disagreement with the fact that this should be rejected. My only concern is whether or not the recommendation refusal reasons are sufficient and complete. I'm pleased to hear that the waste management arrangements are picked up now in 8, but I also think that the servicing arrangements, which are suggested to be out on Nestles Avenues, which the GLA opposes, should be commented on. I think density, we've commented on the density, but I couldn't see that word appearing anywhere in any of our refusal reasons.
Well, we've got overdevelopment, which does come down to the same thing, probably. Which one was the servicing one you were particularly interested in, Councillor?
This is on page 130. It talks about delivery and servicing proposed to be undertaken for the new half-on, half-off street loading on Nestles Avenue.
Well, we've got 8. Says the development by vehicle access, servicing, delivery arrangements comprise highway safety and pedestrian safety. Does that do you?
Okay.
Yep. If anyone's got any other issues with this, can I have a seconder for it? Thank you, Councillor Higgins. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show me. Councillor Evans, refusing?
No, I'm refusing.
Yeah,
definitely.
Unanimously refused. Thank you very much. Item 9, Frogsditch Farm, Sheepston Lane, Hayes.
Thank you, Chair. Frogsditch Farm is a site located on the northern side of Shepherdson Lane. The council cemetery lies to the east of the application site. The development is an outline application seeking planning consent with all matters reserved. If I take you through the planning application, it is fully on Greenbelt land. Now, albeit that it's on Greenbelt land, it has approximately 5 to 6 buildings within the site. They are all in various states of repair. but some of them are actually used. So there is a certificate of lawful use on this site, which has arisen as a result of open storage and other B8 uses being operational on the site for a certain period of time. They therefore benefit from consent to use the site for B8 purposes. I don't want to say our hands are tied, but in terms of, yes, they are. So this is a greenbelt site which has lawful use for B8 operations, and the floor area of the various buildings across the site. So if I take you to, this is an aerial photograph which is probably not helpful, but these are some of the state of the buildings in and around. Some of them are open storage. They're not being counted as floor area, but some of the buildings are actually ground and first floor level, so they are actual accommodation. We had an application come to us, I think last year or the year before. It was withdrawn because we were looking to refuse the application. It was proposing a significant quantum more built floor space than exists on the site at present. So Greenbelt policy does allow for re-provision of floor space as long as it's of a similar quantum. So what we have worked with the applicants to do is to look at the buildings on site, establish which ones are actually viably usable, which ones are actually just open storage, and we've come to the conclusion that approximately 1,409 square metres of floor space is able to be re-provided in a new proposal because it exists on site at the moment. And quite simply, only for those reasons is this application recommended for approval. So we are not seeking to have a greater impact on the Greenbelt. We are only allowing the re-provision of existing floor space in a more suitably purpose-built facility. We have also sought to negotiate that I'll start again. The buildings are spread in various locations throughout the site. They're fairly untidy. So what we're proposing to do is try and seek that the built form is located as far away from the Greenbelt, so the more open Greenbelt in those areas, and is located closer towards Shepperton Lane. It will allow us to then tidy up the Greenbelt and hopefully maybe get some back through a more formalised layout. The application has been recommended for approval to provide 1,400 square metres of B8 use class floor space. Thank you.
There is a small addendum on this one as well, tidying up some conditions.
So, I won't go through the 106, but just to mention it is GLA referable, this application, so we will need to go to the Mayor at stage 2, subject to members being happy with the recommendation.
Councillor Edwards, is Councillor Higgins indicating, or are you just...
Yes, I'm indicating.
No, right, okay, Councillor Edwards, then Councillor Higgins.
I'm just going to move.
Good. Okay, I'll take that and hold it, and I'll just then take Councillor Edwards and Councillor Duncan.
I was going to move or second it, so I can second it.
Well, I'll take a second.
No, that's fine, but you hold it for a minute.
I
want
will.
to know what that blue line is. I can't read what that says. That sort of that snake going.
Neither can I.
It is drainage channels that run through the site that...
So are we making sure that we've covered, if they're building over that we don't have an issue there?
Yes, we have. The drainage officer is happy primarily because it's actually an improvement upon what's there at the moment.
Yeah, I'll second that then, it's fine.
Councillor Duncan, I'll hold those two just pending what Councillor Duncan's going to add.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, it's single storey, is it?
So the built for, as existing or as we're allowing?
As this is proposed.
So we're giving permission for 1,409 square metres of floor space. They can come to us based on their reserve matters to tell us what that building format will look like.
I need to refer members to condition 4, which I think actually the last 2 lines answer your question, Councillor Duncan. So we haven't just tied down the floor area,
We tied down the height.
we've actually tied down the heights as well.
So it's only allowed a maximum height of 6.5 metres, which could be the equivalent of 2 residential stories, but probably just 1 commercial
Won't be much higher than 1 commercial. It certainly won't be 2.
Because it's quite a big footprint.
Yeah.
That was why I was asking about that.
But if it's tied down to 6.5 metres, that does at least...
Yeah, 6.5 metres and no more than that in floor space.
Yeah, so that ties it up.
That
Okay, I'm proposed and seconded on this one. If I see no other hands, therefore I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please show me. Unanimously approved. Thank you very much. I move to agenda item 10, the Crane Public House, Water Splash Lane, Hayes. Add it when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application to redevelop a former pub, the Crane Public House on Water Splash Lane. The application is for 27 self-contained residential units, and I'll take you through the plan. So the Crane Public House is on the southern side of North Hyde Road. To provide some context, the Ballsbridge roundabout is here, and further down North Hyde Road you get to Station Road Junction, where you lead up into the High Street or the Asda. The development site is located in extremely close proximity to Cranford Park. For those reasons, we have sought contributions towards suitable uplift to the projects that are ongoing at Cranford Park to provide play areas and refurbish some of those listed buildings. This is a plan of the application site. So the former pub is approximately 2 stories across the site, does have a lot of additions which have been added on. It has changed hands a few times, but it has predominantly been retained as what I would class as a restaurant, a 3-use stroke and A4 public house. This plan is quite useful in showing the context to the residential properties which surround the site. It is to the south of the site. It's worth mentioning that this area along North Hyde Road, but to the south of the actual development, it's not actually to the south, it would be to the west, is a parade of commercial premises. So as part of this application, we weren't really seeking to compete by providing additional commercial premises, albeit the pub exists. It's not overly commercially viable, is one of the things that we've been through, and seeking retail at ground floor level on this site would have competed with this local centre, which is not something we wanted to do through the plans. So this development does propose residential accommodation at ground at all levels of the property, and the car parking has been provided on the southernmost part of the site, and these are the existing residential properties here. Primarily, the car park provides its own buffer between the application site and the existing residential properties, and it is also the location of the existing car park which services the public house. These are typical floor plans of the application site. One of the things I'd like to point out is that traditionally we have lots of balconies in order to provide private amenity space to every single unit. You will notice that this scheme is notably different. We only have balconies on the rear of the property, so facing into the communal amenity space, and the front facades, so the predominant ones on North Hyde Road and Roseville Road, have been tried to keep clear, and that's primarily because of the design ethos that is proposed as part of this application. It's taking quite a defined structure and providing clean lines. We've been through a few iterations. The design officer was supportive of the design as it reflects the substation which is located on the northern side of North Hyde Road. And it's also a gateway into the application site from Ballsbridge when you enter the borough, and therefore we wanted it to have more clean lines and have some presence. As a result, we have been through iterations where we've removed the balconies from the front elevations along the principal facades, and have sought to provide better amenity space at ground floor level by providing suitable hedging and enclosure. So there are some balconies internally, but the main facades on North Hyde and Roseville are all clean, is probably the easiest way of putting it. And these are some typical elevations, or CGI, of the proposed development, and it has been designed to be as clean lined as possible. There are amenity areas located set in, very similar to the Belmore allotment scheme on plan, so they're set into the application, into the roofscape, so that they provide private amenity space but don't have that detriment of potential overlooking to the existing residents. And here you can see the access from Roseville Road into the surface level car park. The bottom image is extremely useful in showing that this is where the communal amenity space will be, and also some child play space would also be provided on site. If I take you to the floor plan, we had some comments from the Secure by Design officer, primarily because the original application sought to provide access for residents here, because there are so many primary accesses from Northside Road and Roseville Road, it was seen as a better solution to provide a more secure boundary along the northern stretch. This is also supported because the applicants are gifting 2 metres of public footpath in order to provide a footpath on the southern side of Water Splash Lane, which doesn't exist at the moment. I'll show you that in the photographs. Hopefully, so this is the existing site, the Crane Public House. So the reference I was referring to is this building here. So we're taking a cue of the design of this site from what is a fairly prominent building on Northside Road. So if you look at this is Water Splash Lane, you'll see that there is no footpath along this stretch of the Water Splash Lane. The only footpath which exists, and I'll try and get to an image of it soon. No, I don't have an image, I'm ever so sorry. So the other side of Water Splash Lane, so on this side, on the other side, has the primary pedestrian access. So we're proposing to provide 2 pedestrian routes down to Cranford Park. The application is providing 35% affordable housing, which is also 10-year compliant. So we are supportive of the application. We've been through substantial pre-application correspondence, and we believe we're at a proposal which we deem to be an approval. Thank you.
Higgins.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you the building that we're referring to for this design, is that a residential or is that office?
No, I believe it's I
Office.
don't even think it's commercial. It might just be storage in its the electricity substation. So it would be classed as. I don't think it would have a use.
I mean, I don't see the correlation between having to. Well, why don't we? You know, I don't
redesign it again, are you?
No, I'm sorry. I can't support this. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, you can't have using office blocks as a way. I mean, it's bad enough as it is now that we're having a lot of office blocks turning into flats. But then I know. But but it's based on it's like an office area. That's what they originally when it was designed. But I just don't understand the correlation. I can't see how it's not in keeping at all. At all. I'm sorry, I just don't understand it.
Okay, we'll see if others develop that theme as we go on with it. Okay.
The wider area, there's been quite a few proposals at Silverdale, members will be familiar with some of them, elements of the Buccleuch, the Nestle, where there's bits of industrial architecture that then gets sort of slightly, in theory, subtly integrated into the residential elements of a scheme. The plans here probably, they're not the great, in terms of the colouring in of the plans, they don't really sell the scheme because it's an entirely brick building, and if it's got the right brick, it would probably, dare I say, look slightly more attractive when built than the images are portraying, because they're not quite as crisp as some of the really nice CGIs that we get.
But through you, Chairman, the point is the reason it's a box is it's easier to build. I mean, it's just you know, I'm not, you know, it's cheap to build if you're going to use brick. There's no architectural element to this that it looks, well, it looks like a, I don't know, I'm not going to say what it looks like anyway, but that's beside the point. I don't get it.
This is in the public record today.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Councillor Oswald, I think you were first, then Councillor Morse, then Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks very much. Mandit, on the car park, the green around the, I'll show you on there, this bit around here. What is that? Metal railings, is it? Is it the boundary? Do you know what the boundary is? Is it hedge? Metal railings? Is it a wall?
I believe that will be subject to a condition, but at the moment it's proposed as landscaping. It might be a hedgerow.
Okay. Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
That house at Roseville Road, number 3, has had an awful lot of aggravation over the years from this public house. Actually, going back to the 1980s, that was a good pub. My friend ran that pub, and it was good. It was very well run. There was no problems at all. But in latter years, number 3 Roseville Road has had an awful lot of problems from that public house. And I noticed that the car park is right up to the boundary, and I'm just wondering about noise mitigation, basically, from the car park. Thank you.
So we had toyed with the idea of an acoustic fence. However, and we can impose one as a planning committee should you wish to do so. The justification, because it's an existing car park, for an acoustic barrier was limited in planning terms. But if you feel it's more appropriate because you know the history of the site, it's something that we can incorporate into a new condition or into...
But then we end up with a close boarded fence as opposed to nice hedgerow. Is that what we wind up with?
Chairman, I don't mind what we do with it. I mean, I was a councillor in Pinkwell for 15 years, so I do know a little bit of history about it.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
And I'm just trying to mitigate some noise from this. I'm not against this application. I think it's all right. Sorry, Henry, but I think it's okay. But I am a little bit worried about number 3 Roseville Road, and I think that we should try and do something.
Okay, let's just hold that for a second and let's take the others and we'll...
Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Oswald's statement about that. But this site has been a problem of drug dealing and crime and has actually given the police a lot of fault. This development will be a case where you can't stop crime by development, but this will actually be a total improvement of the area. And the only issue I had with it was the houses on the Water Splash Lane. However, I think they're 23 metres away, because there's one section where it's 4 stories high. I had a little bit of concern about that, but I, as far as I'm concerned, this is a big asset for Pinkwell. Thank you.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I would echo what Councillor Higgins says about this. It is a bit of a novel approach to be basing housing design on nearby electricity substations, and I would have hoped that we would have seen a different design. However, I'm opposed to this on principle because, as everyone will have seen, it's in the Hayes focus area for air quality. This means, as we all know, air quality limits are exceeded, there's relevant public exposure, and action should be priorities to achieve significant improvements in air quality. So sadly, it's not something I can support, because I just don't think we should be putting more people, more families into these areas. And I know that there's money changing hands, I don't mean that in any corrupt sense, or I hope not anyway. I mean that money will be spent to mitigate this and to improve air quality, but in the end the air is going to be just as polluted for people to breathe in. So until we do see some improvement in that, I'm sorry, I can't support that.
Your objection is noted.
Just mention a quick point. I am aware, because the ASBI team had verbally spoken to me, so I don't have written comments, but it is a problem site, and Council's ASBI team would strongly support this application were they here. They don't have speaking rights, but the other point I was going to say is I do actually concur with the comments regarding the acoustic fencing, because I get to see many schemes, and on comparable sites we have gone for acoustic fencing when there's a car park. So there is a wide enough buffer that you could do soft landscaping, but I'd actually go with the acoustic fencing in this case.
Okay, I'll take that. Councillor Tucker, you indicated.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I used to frequent this facility back in the late 80s as well. And
we don't have any more decorations. Who was there? This is getting a bit worrying. Come on.
Just one area I want to just to get clarified is around the gate details. Is that a car park or a gate to the car park, or is it a gated community?
I think it's the only thing I could see you could gate here would be the car park. It is just the car park. Which I think would be supported given the antisocial behaviour histories of the area. We wouldn't want to create an open car park. Is everybody happy to get the landscaping condition tweaked by the head of planning if we delegate him to do so, to include reference to acoustic fencing as suggested? Comfortable with that?
I can't recollect whether this has been moved. We go with the officer's recommendation.
Not yet. I'm hoping that's what you're about to do for me.
I will move. However, I will also add the rider that I think it's a disappointment they've removed balconies and put some reflection of a brutalist industrial building beyond the amenity of residents. Okay. And I hope that our planning officers reflect.
You're not
future.
hoping this becomes a trend? Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Edwards. Okay. Who's going to second for me? Thank you, Councillor Chamdale.
Second, and it does say on page 211 that the proposed development has been sensitively designed. Whatever that means, I don't know. But
I think design is one of those things that we all have views on, and I'm not going to go into this one tonight because I'm looking. Can all those in favour of approval please clearly show me? Thank you. All those against? Thank you. And you abstaining, Councillor Higgins? Thank you. Noted. That one is approved. Right, I move on. Agenda item 11 is Stonefield Close Ruislip. We're into an industrial building in an industrial area, so this should be relatively straightforward. Do we need a presentation on this one, given where it is, if you know it?
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
Can I just add a little tweak that I believe there should be some caveat in the conditions to reserve parking for the trade counter use?
To avoid it spilling out onto Stonefield Way, I presume
Absolutely
is your thought process,
absolutely it does.
I think if I could delegate to the head of planning to look at condition 1C for us.
3 or 4 spaces at trade counter out of the allocation that's there would be adequate.
And most of them are standard 6 spaces plus a disabled. So in other retailers,
if we get James to agree an appropriate division with it.
So that was moved over there. I'll second it.
Right. Okay. Moved and seconded, subject to those changes. All those in favour, please show me. Thank you. That one's approved. Now making some progress now. Bridge House, Riverside House, Waterside House, Oxford Road, Ruislip. Ruislip, I'm in the wrong place now. Uxbridge. Essentially, if I've got this one correct, this is switching. This is a prior approval, so we have very limited powers before we all get too carried away in this one. Is switching what they were planning to do, which was virtually all 1 beds, and putting 50 more 2 beds in. Mandip will add anything else that's relevant to this.
That's exactly correct. So we had a prior approval granted on this employment site, which was regrettable that it had to be approved, primarily because our Article 4 was not in place at the time. We have therefore already lost the employment floor space. The applicants are coming in to intensify the use. The car parking is commensurate to the quantum of development on site. We have a financial contribution to uplifts to public realm, so we want better connections from this site, which is on the other side of the canal, in order to get to Oxford Town Centre. There are proposals which have been approved, so we're just seeking additional monetary contributions to implement those public realm enhancements. The application is recommended for approval.
Councillor Duncan? Yeah, nobody's got anything else? No? All those in favour, please show me. Thank you very much. I reached the last one of the night for those who are doing majors. For those who've got north to do, there's a lot more to come. The old vinyl factory, this is about an S106 agreement, so Amanda will just take us through the very short version of this.
The easiest way to explain this is that we have given planning permission for the whole site a number of years ago. More recently, when the applicants couldn't develop one of the phases as approved under the outline consent, they got a separate full planning permission. There is duplication in the legal agreement. Now, duplication is good because then we don't miss out. However, we can't double count. So this legal change is effectively removing double counting. There is no impact to the affordable housing we've secured on the site. It remains as is. This is simply removing, I'd say admin errors, but if we hadn't made the admin errors, there is the potential we wouldn't have got our Section 106 contributions.
Not losing any financial benefit? No? Okay, fine. I'll go to officer's recommendation.
Any other queries? No? All those in favour, please show me. Thank you very much indeed. That one's agreed. 7:45. Thank you very much.